Hello, everyone. We have Sharia Huda. She is a mentor, an EdTech specialist, and she's here to join us today to talk about how the future of work, what her thoughts are on the future of work, how it's impacting EdTech, and just how she's going about her life post-COVID. So, Sharia, one thing I've noticed, and one thing I noticed post-COVID compared to pre-COVID was everybody, and I'm gonna tap into your expertise in the event space first, because she's also the head of the EdTech Meetup out of New York. A lot of events were hosted in person, and everybody relied heavily upon this in-person interaction, and we really didn't do anything about it offline. It was like, oh, hey, I met you, here's my business card, maybe we'd connect on LinkedIn, and then we go about it. Maybe we text, we'd set up meetings, but that was it. It was a very natural procession. Now that COVID's hit, there's no way to meet for these conferences in person. So for the New York EdTech meetup, what's going on there?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that question. We actually did a networking mixer yesterday. So Jessica Millstone and Mike Leva, they're my other co-organizers. And I think with the New York EdTech meetup, we really created like a community foundation beforehand. So whenever someone who is new attends the mixer, they always keep coming back. And we've had folks from, who fly into New York due to other reasons, and they end up coming to the mixer. So I think this has allowed other people from different states who couldn't really come to New York City, that Tuesday once a month to attend the mixer. And this is like leverage accessibility for them, right? You don't necessarily have to take the MTA. You don't have to book a flight, just hop on a Zoom call. And we do it in a way where it's really informal. There really isn't much structure to it. We put people in breakout rooms, come back together, and then connect on, what are some things you've learned talking to these new connections, and what is something that you can offer. And from there, just following up with our community. I think that's what people want, right? I think people want to be connected with other folks. And if you're working on a cool project, you want to share that, because you never know who can actually also utilize that project too.
Yeah,
It's really fun.
as humans, we're always craving this social interaction. But I'm wondering, so before, how was the structure of it? You had these, because you didn't have, I don't assume you had these breakout rooms. You just invite everybody to this and you just threw them to the wild. Now you're having breakout rooms. Are you like, hey, Calvin, you should talk to Jason or whatever?
Yeah, so in the in-person ones, it's once a month on a Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. to 8, sometimes 8:30, and ideally from 6:30 to 7. We have food and drinks, food provided by Perfect Picnic, and they, in the space, people are either networking or you're also like lurking around. You're like, who do I want to talk to? Do I feel comfortable? And then eventually, as people are mingling, we do quick intros, which is, hey, who are new members? What is it that you can offer? What is something that you would like to share? And from there, I think based on the shares and offers, people are like, oh, I really need to connect with this person. And switching over to digital space with that, I think it really helps folks who are introverts, because sometimes being in a large crowd could be very overwhelming. Whereas if you're in a large crowd online, quote unquote, you can leave. I mean, you don't really feel that awkward, or you're in the background just listening to conversations, and then you jump in whenever you want to.
Sure.
So I think doing networking or just meeting people online, it enables folks who are introverts but also extroverts at the same time.
Yeah, and so that's kind of interesting. I've always wondered how this introvert extrovert experience going into these in person and then online, because even online it still can be apprehensive. You have a group of, let's say you have these, I don't know how big are your breakout rooms?
So the ones online so far, it depends. So far we've had about 30 members attend. Usually in person goes to about 30 to 150, 120.
Sure.
So just facilitating the breakout rooms, we mix it up. So the first breakout room, you're talking to someone maybe for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes,
Oh.
and then we switch it up so that way you get to talk to someone else.
So they're one-on-one breakout rooms.
There's about, I mean, yesterday we had about 7 breakout rooms.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess like about 4 people per room.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, even, I mean, I've gone to enough online events now that I don't, unless someone's encouraging the interaction, people aren't interacting because it still can be pretty
Yeah.
stressful to like, hey, my name is Calvin Smith. Please reach out to me. Here's my LinkedIn. Here's my email. And that still is a fairly extroverted way of interacting with people. So how does, I mean, you're in the event space. How do we encourage like, and this is kind of like how the future is going to be. This isn't going away. And I think there's going to be some, and maybe you can speak about what you see the future of this going, no matter what the situation is, regardless of if we can meet in person, how an in-person offline works. But how do we, like, how do you foresee this working?
So I like that, you know, for those who have access to tech, I like how this is kind of putting you in a place where you are connecting with other people. I think that our soft skills and hard skills are being, you know, challenged right here, right? You may have the technical skills, and as new career opportunities are showing up, as new industries are rising, I think it's really important to not just have technical skills, because right now we need to have the technical skills, right? We need to know how
Sure.
to log into a platform, know how to utilize it. But it's also important to have those soft skills and hard skills, being able to collaborate, being able to project manage, being able to time manage, understanding how people are communicating. So when you're interacting with someone online, in a way, you're building on those skills that you may have not built on that prior to this. So it's really forcing us in a way, in an organic way, I would say.
Yeah,
Because it's
no,
all about adaptability, right? At this point.
100%. Like, I think before, like, I mean, just when you were talking about that lurking at the beginning of your events, I definitely felt like I was lurking around. Who am I going to talk to? And then you have no juxtaposition of what you're going to do. You just have to wait for like, all right, Sharia's coming up. Okay. All right. Introduce yourself. I'm new. And okay, let's meet up. That's cool. But I really like how you have these breakout rooms. And then when you see this, the how the future is going to work out, when you talk about these soft skills and hard skills, like you can't come into it just going like, even for this, like I have Bluetooth headphones and I have this, like, it's not a seamless integration of just connecting things and everything works together. Like I had to figure out through the Zoom where the mic was, where the headphones were, and that's having some knowledge of technical skills. So what are the biggest soft skills? And I want to transition from hard technical skills because those are pretty, I mean, maybe they're not so obvious and maybe you can touch upon that, but what are the soft skills that you see as the biggest hurdle for people as the future of work gets um, moving forward, I guess?
I think clear communication.
Okay.
Um,
How
the
so?
reason why I say clear communication, it's because I think technology, in a way, raises accountability on us.
Okay.
And if you are, you know, resistant to it, that's going to raise accountability on you. Like, okay, do you know how to log into this device? If there's an issue, can you advocate for that? Can you be, you know, be transparent about that if you're having issues?
Mm-hmm.
I think let's say for example the, you know, schools right now, schools are just forced to be online. Some schools, I would say majority of schools, given that, you know, remote learning and distance learning is how you're able to teach your students. So
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't roll out those technology prior to the pandemic, and now you're being forced to, now this raises accountability on your tech usage.
And
Yeah.
do you see people, I guess, because you're saying it's raising the accountability, these teachers or even the students, do you feel that they were, I hate to use the word lazy because no one's lazy in this aspect, but when it comes to technology, right, they would rely too heavily on something else, but now that this is here, it's what's happening right now.
I wouldn't necessarily say lazy. So there's two ways to look at it, right?
Sure.
one way is rolling out tech to someone who may be resistant to it, who's not comfortable, right? And then there's also rolling out tech during a pandemic, where your main focus is, am I okay? You know, am I mentally okay? And no, I'm not. So how am I going to go online and act like everything is fine when I myself internally am not fine? So I think, especially in schools where you're rolling out tech and you expect students to show up online, I think we need to really focus on that mental health piece in terms of rolling out technology during this time, as well as putting that pressure on educators to be able to facilitate a conversation online.
How do you manage? Like, I'm going to touch upon this mental health aspect because that seems pretty important, because I think, I mean, even for myself, I'll speak for myself. I feel like I have some mental health issues of just day to day, like just managing my life, whatever it can be. But like, how, like, and I had the capability of seeing someone in person. How is this being handled through technology and in schools where it seems insanely hard to do in person, just managing it in a school setting?
And you know, there's so many things we could talk about. Right? We could talk about the digital divide. You know, digital divide being a whole nother issue. I think there's magic to tech, right? Magic to tech in a way where if you are a student and you're not able to see your friends right now, maybe you're able to, if you have a device, maybe you're able to join a game where you can interact with your friends. So that way there's still some type of engagement there. Like, I'm not really, you know, hanging out with my friends in school right now. I'm able to chat with them online. I'm able to play this game. I'm able to play, I don't know, a virtual pool online, and we're on the same team or something like that, right? And I think there's ways to do it. There's a way to cope with it, but we're all learning as we're going right now. You know, no one really has the answers, and I think that's fine. I think that's how education is, where you are literally learning as you're going. You're failing, you're learning, you're growing, you're failing again. And I think we're sometimes too hard on ourselves. And that's going to be another thing in terms of like the future of work, is accepting failure. It's fine, and owning up to it.
Sure. I mean, as an entrepreneur, failure is like the first thing you learn how to accept. Like, if you don't fail, then I don't think there's a possibility for you to succeed. And failure looks a whole lot of different ways for every entrepreneur. Like in my first company right out of college, it was a failure in terms of like we closed up, it didn't work out, but I learned a lot. So how, like, that's part of the entrepreneurship journey of just learning how to succeed, whereas now I've iterated, I've learned a lot, and now I've launched a new company, and it's actually, so far all these failures have taught me something new. Speaking about these failures, how do you see people like adjusting to that? And yeah.
I think as we've seen some startups who are, you know, going through some challenges right now, and even businesses, I think we're hitting a road of just self-reflection, and self-development, which we may not have had a chance to kind of sit down and think about if it weren't for this lockdown. Because it really forces you to be vulnerable. It forces you to think. It forces you, okay, where am I going next? Whether it's my career, or where am I going next? Whether it's a personal development. So I'm excited for the future of work. I think it's going to be very interesting in many aspects. And I don't know. I'm hopeful.
Okay. Like, when you say you're hopeful for the future of work, how do you foresee, like, even let's take your specialty in EdTech, like after people can go back to the school and they can sit down in a class, right? How is their lives going to be affected 6 months from now?
I mean, given if, you know, we're back in class.
Yes. Let's say, assuming we're in class.
Assuming we are, I feel like that teachers will be much more confident using the products now. I'm using EdTech products. And an EdTech product could be, I think that's a very vague word, right? EdTech, there's so many things, whether it's a learning management system, whether it's a tool to enhance design thinking, right? There's so many ways to describe EdTech. And I think, I'm hopeful to see more administration support. When you're not getting support from the top, then it's going to impact how you're teaching your classes. Right? You may have a vision, but if your administration isn't supporting your vision, then you're just at a roadblock there. I was a former EdTech specialist where I had an administration role as well as the teacher role. So I was really lucky, I was lucky because I was the one deciding what tools to roll out. And I know not everyone has that luxury. And it also differentiates if you work at a public school, at an independent school, in higher ed. So all that changes. And I think this situation is also allowing students to understand how they're learning.
Okay. That's interesting that it comes from the administrative. I guess that makes sense that it has to come from the admin side of it, because if they don't set the tone for it, if you're not getting the support from the top, how are you as someone that's, beneath, one layer below, how are you going to roll something out successfully? If the admin's like, no, just take the books and teach. What do you do when you don't have books?
And that's fine. I think it's all about, like I mentioned before, it's all about adaptability. You can teach without having technology. Technology, it does enhance the learning experience and make it much more accessible, but you can still get your point across without using tech. So there are two things I talk about. I like to mention is, I could watch Netflix and assign maybe an episode of Black Mirror. I'm like, hey, we're going to talk about cybersecurity today. We're going to use a clip from this and break down this information and dive into deeper conversations, right? And as some students are already engaged in Netflix, that's like, okay, we're doing something different outside the classroom instead of reading this manual. Let's switch it up. Or if we want to use less tech and think about how do you help build a community? What are some ways to build a community? We can think about looking at a bridge. I'm staring at this bridge. I bring my students, maybe I show them a photo of a bridge. And all I show is just a photo of the bridge. And from that, questions start coming up. Well, why is this bridge here? Is it broken? What kind of material is the bridge made out of? How old is this bridge? And the questions get deeper and deeper, and then eventually developing your thesis statement, right? So there are ways to do things without always depending on technology. And I think it's important to have that flexibility of both. There are advantages to both. I was actually in an interesting conversation last week about asynchronous learning and synchronous learning, whether it's having a class online, a live time, and having students join in versus posting the course online and having the flexibility to go into that course whenever you can. So I think there's so many things to think about, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole talking about, your learning environment, is it a safe space to learn? Can you access the material? But I think, I think there are going to be pros and cons out of this. You're going to learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
I'll say for my own, I can't even fathom to know the difference between, not the difference, just the outside struggles. For my own personal struggles, when I've tried to do these online classes, it's always been tough to do it from the recordings, but I see what you mean when in terms of access. Sometimes it's helpful when I've done something, and I'd be lying to say if I went to something live and then rewatched the recording, because I might have done that once out of the 300 times I've done it. So there's probably, way more about that than I do. I just know that I think, like you said, that different people, different situations you have to have more than just one, not one way is correct.
Yeah, and I think not just students right now, right? People who are working remote now. If you've never worked remote before and you're working remote now, you're actually learning what works best for you. Are you someone who can work remote? Does this work for you? Versus, no, I cannot work remote. Or this is how I can build my routines around this. I actually understand what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And this transcends aside from a classroom. So there's a lot of I don't know. I'm just so excited.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have not only been a remote worker for the last 12 years. I think about it every single time. Like, how long have I been doing? I've been on and off a remote worker for 12 years. I've been a remote executive for the last 3 years. And so I know it works for me, but that's not the case for everybody. I've talked to numerous people who have been like, this is, they're just like, I don't know how you do this. Like, give me some tips. What is it like? They're even talking about like, not conversations, but like meetings, right? They're like, how do you handle meetings? Like, do we need to have these daily meetings? I hate daily meetings. So that's just my executive style. That's just how I manage. But some people are having these daily meetings, right?
And then you realize, are these meetings actually, valuable?
Yes.
Is it just a waste of time? So now it's also helping your company decide, when you're deciding what's your next, 3-year plan, and you're planning and what is working, what isn't working. You may not have had this opportunity if you were in person at the office.
Yeah. Because when you're in person in the office, you just see each other and just natural. You take a break, you go bother somebody. There's oftentimes there's just like random chats that people interrupt each other with.
Yeah,
And
and I agree. And it's even along with that, this allows employers, like the leadership team, to decide, are these employees the people we want to continue staying at the company? Or, are we paying them to do the job that isn't really done efficiently? So that also, going back to the future of work, I think, and the word accountability, it's gonna be very interesting to see who still has a job after these remote transition, and who are being let go, and who is actually shining at work. Who's been doing the work that we didn't hear about. Wow, this person has been so active and we never noticed it before.
yeah, because sometimes things can get hidden when you're in an office.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can just be stuck in front of the computer screen, and they might be the worst at interacting with people, but they're a good worker, but they're just like, I don't know how to navigate the political landscape of the office. I don't know how to get into my manager's ear at the right time.
And I think as educators, we think of our students, we think how they learn. But when I was when I switched to corporate ed tech, my number one focus was, okay, I have a background in accessibility. I get how students learn, but I really want to know how employees learn, because that's going to impact the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your employees aren't understanding how the product is being used, or if you're running a meeting where you have 3 people on your team who have severe ADHD, and you are talking the whole time for 45 minutes and having everyone sit down, is this meeting effective?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think the next thing I'm hoping we have more conversations about is going to be neurodiversity. It's really on, how are people learning,
Mm-hmm.
and their way. Like, I think everyone has, when we talk about diversity, diversity can be many things: diversity in access, diversity in culture, diversity in your employees, right, and your teams. But
Mm-hmm.
I think neurodiversity, it's more on how are you learning and navigating the space. For example, for me, as someone who does have ADHD, I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So when
Okay.
I'm in a meeting, I'm gonna advocate for that, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe there are people who don't realize how they're learning just yet. So I think there needs to be more conversations about this, so that way people feel more comfortable talking about it. If we don't talk about things, it's just like hidden underneath the rug, right? Just like, hey, if I don't know how to use Slack or Zoom or create a meeting on it, I'm gonna feel uncomfortable talking about it. I don't want to be the first person to share that. Oh, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. No one wants to be well, it depends, but it's and not even just that. Sometimes it's hard just to be the first follower of whatever's happening. I mean, I'll give a when you talk about this neurodiversity and everything you're talking about earlier, um, with my interactions in Latin America, for example, I'm working with at Higher Lama. We have a special I guess we have this education platform. It's very informal, where we actually take women in South America with English skills, and we teach them how to be remote employees and to be better customer experience and inbound marketers. What we're finding, and because we're doing this just because we see a problem that happens in South America, especially facing the women. They're just the access that they have to jobs, the other issues facing women in third world countries are much more different than the issues that women face in, well, similar anyway. We're finding that, again, they're all learning in different ways, and I think it's something that I'm learning on the fly. I'm finding these women that they're excited to learn, but they just essentially they just want to get to work, but they don't have any remote skills. They're very like, hey, I'll just pick up my computer, I'll pick up my phone, and I'll try to work, right? And something like, coming from a first world country, coming from someone that has this experience, it's actually an interesting dynamic of teaching without access.
Yeah, I think I was born in Bangladesh. It's a developing country, and I grew up in New York City, but everything was just I need to figure it out on my own because I don't have the support for it. And there's some beauty in that, right? There's beauty in figuring things out on your own because you're kind of forced to figure. You're like, okay, I'm gonna do it somehow. I'm gonna figure it out. Whether it's me trying on my own several times, and if I can't, then I'll reach out to someone. And I wish I had the mentorship or coach, during my adolescent years. And I think as folks who are transitioning over to remote work, or as, even if it's their first job, I think it's important to have some form of professional development or a coach to kind of guide them through making sure, hey, this is fine. What you're doing is okay. Let me just kind of guide you or support you a little bit more to get you to where you need to be at.
Oh yeah. Like, one thing I've noticed, like, regardless of how well they've adapted, I just have weekly check-ins, just weekly, like it's like 5 minutes sometimes, and then we just talk about whatever.
And how's that been going? Like the weekly check-ins? How do you?
It's awesome. Like, honestly, I just tell them like, hey, like I have them read a bunch of articles on just like what's happening in the news, just to get their attention heightened, get them to interact with me better. So I think that when we were first starting out, I think just these weekly quick check-ins, just creating a habit, creating this very basic habit, especially when you're working with people in Latin America. And now we've gotten, I think, 4 students, or I guess 4 women that are graduating soon, and they're ready. Well, I guess it's bad timing, but
there's an opportunity, right? I mean, maybe bad timing in the job market, depending on which industry. Really.
Yeah.
But they're getting these skills. They're getting these skills that are still going to be utilized.
And I'd like to also tap into your experience as a mentor. Like, I assumed as a mentor, please tell me if you know more about it. I mean, of course you know more. As a mentor, were you always this remote, or was it a mixture?
Yeah. So, and I mentored many things, right? One thing I've been mentoring a lot more on is just working directly with startup founders and mentoring on their product, right? Aside from mentoring on your product and strategic partnerships, I focus on executive coaching because I think sometimes you can hit tunnel vision, especially when you have so many ideas and you're looking for fundraising or you're looking to build a team. It can be easy to hit tunnel vision when you have so many things happening all at once. And I like that. Often I tell them, hey, just pause for a moment. Just literally just pause. Just pause for a moment and think about how you're fostering relationships. Because you can
Okay.
have a great idea, you can have a solution, but if you aren't fostering relationships with the people you're talking to, they're gonna remember you as not someone they might want to work with. And that goes back to not just a founder, but just with students, grad students, undergrad students, professionals, just knowing how to foster relationships. Because I think that's going to bring out more authenticity and more vulnerability as you're talking to people.
That's important to touch upon. And I really want to end this just like to get, I guess, final two thoughts from you. One being, where do you, I guess, speak about how like conference-based EdTech, entrepreneurship, corporate learning, you do a lot of things. Where do you see this? Where do you see this combination of the future of work? I guess, what do you see the future of work in any of those or all four of those spaces combining?
Honestly, I've been thinking about the word EdTech. I
Okay.
think EdTech, FinTech, health tech, everything is tech, and I feel like things are going to go back to being its own category, like non-tech, because this is just like what it is now. So education is going to be education, health is going to be health, business is going to be business.
Mm-hmm.
So it might go back to normal. I don't have all the answers. I'm just a lurker and a listener and
In the
a
background.
I'm in the background, and I like to see how things are flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are going to start to realize more of the importance of technology
Mm-hmm.
and how it is, some companies who decided remote work wasn't for them, or they're never going to go remote, are seeing maybe we should change our company culture now. We never offered a remote, but maybe we should give that as an option so we can get talents from other places too. And even with schools, it's if you have the money to get these products. And I can talk about the digital divide. Maybe we can talk about that another day. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think the future of whatever things may go, we'll see more partnerships happen, right? So
Okay.
an example, Kahoot is a gamified platform, ideally used in schools, but you have companies like Facebook using it during business meetings. Slack and Zoom are communicative platforms where you can talk with other teams, but now you have schools using it. And maybe some schools may have used it even before the pandemic, but more are using it now. Other industries, right? Whether it's podcasts have been around for some time, but even more now.
Yeah.
But now students may be using podcasts to talk about their journey and what they're learning in classrooms as a little assignment. So there's going to be a lot of partnerships happening across multiple industries, and I think we're going to get more of a community feel out of what's going to be happening soon. So I know I mentioned I'm hopeful, and I'm just open to all these changes, and we're just going to keep riding this wave out together.
Rock on. Well, let's continue riding this wave. I really want to thank you again for stopping by. Sharia, anything you want to plug at the last minute, or?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone that's listening, if you have questions about, education technology, whether it's with schools or the corporate level, or just want to have a conversation, I'm open to it. I'll share my email and contact information, or Calvin, you
Excellent.
have it, so feel free
Yep.
to share that. You can
Yep.
reach me at LinkedIn at Sharia Huda, SHARIA HUDA. LinkedIn's going to be the next wave, so be on that soon.
Exactly. Well, again, Sharia, thank you for stopping by, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.
Take it easy.